go find your who that, yes, they're going to be costly at the beginning, but the return on your investment is both time, it's going to get done well, and it's going to get done fast. And your return is going to be much faster and much better.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the High Level Spotlight Sessions, where we showcase awesome marketers doing awesome marketing. Today, I'm joined by Joey Gilkey. He is the CEO of Sales Driven Agency, and they teach digital agency owners and leaders to fire themselves from sales. Joey is also the founder of the Best Damn Agency Mastermind. Joey, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Jace, man, thank you for having me on. Appreciate you bringing me in.
No, this should be fun. How long have you guys been doing this?
Oh man, I have been doing sales ops and rev ops for a decade or so. I've been doing it in the agency space for probably the last 6 years. One of which was for an agency. And then probably the last 4.5 years or so has been me on my own running a sales driven agency in some way, shape or form variation where we have worked specifically with agencies to build out their sales operation.
And are you like a prototypical sales guy? Like, I feel like salespeople are a different breed. And when they know they're a sales guy, they're like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. Cause I would say I am a thoroughbred salesperson.
Okay,
and so
there it is.
I have to make it very clear that I am not who you probably are. And that's okay. Right. Like,
that's exactly where I was going. Like when you meet a sales guy, right? Like, let's talk about this, right? You start an agency. It's usually you and maybe you and a friend or a partner or whatever, and you're both really good at something. Maybe, maybe you're a programmer, maybe
creative
or SEO, you're creative. And then you're like, all right, shoot, we got to get customers. Like, which one of us wants to take this on? And one of you starts working on it. And like, you're like, man, I really don't enjoy this. Like, And then you start talking to real salespeople and it's like, holy smokes. Like, this guy or girl like lives for sales. Like, this is going to be great. Well, but they're few and far between.
That's right. Yeah. And I live and breathe sales. I love it to death. It makes me sad that I don't get to do it that often as I grow. But very similar things between me and you is I might be able to take my organization a little bit further in revenue wise because I'm so good at sales than maybe you would, who's not good at sales. But at some point we're both the bottleneck. And we have to build the sales operation. I realized that a long time ago that my business can't be dependent upon me, no matter how good or how bad I am at sales, if I truly want to get to where I want to get to with my goals, my personal goals, my business goals, things of that nature. And so that's where it's like, hey, even playing field, there's a ceiling for both of us. And that ceiling is not high enough for where I want to be and probably where you want to be with your business.
Gotcha. So it's not necessarily, hey, we're firing the person who's doing sales because they're probably not a natural born salesperson. It's, hey, you need a whole sales process in here. So that's what you guys come in and do.
Yeah. I mean,
talk to me about that. Like,
yeah, exactly. So I work with agencies that are just terrible at sales and they're maybe doing 250, 500 grand a year. And I work with agencies that are doing pretty well, doing 12 million, 15 million in revenue. And they typically all have hit a plateau of some sort. And so arguably I can help the person doing 12 or 15 million more because they have more resources. They get it to some degree. I can make little tweaks to what they're doing, and add 5, 10, 15 million. I can 2x their business within a year's time, oftentimes. And so it's just as impactful for them, but nonetheless, it always comes down to most agencies didn't get to running their agency on purpose, right? They might have, right? They heard from someone, either they worked for someone, their other agency.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Most of them kind of come from a creative, strategic, technical background of some sort of marketing, SEO. They're good at running traffic, whatever it might be. And they worked for somebody else, whether it's another agency or they're a W-2 somewhere else. And they either decided to start their own thing because it didn't seem that hard, or it kind of happened by happenstance where some side project came.
You did it for a friend.
You did it for a friend, was
recommended you.
Referrals started coming in, and next thing you know, you decide to hire someone, and boom, now you run an agency and you didn't know you got there.
That's actually fascinating because that makes total sense. That's typically the story. And when you think about it, that means you didn't purposely start an agency.
Mm-hmm. And which is true. Like, whereas a lot of other businesses, they kind of did start on purpose to some degree. Whereas agency is a little bit unique because it's a service and it's a provider, and you could do something really cool that you didn't know someone would pay for, and now they do. And some people get a lot further with that ability, whether it's they have a really big network or they're really world-class at what they do. And that's why you can see a disparity between someone who can do 250,000 and someone who can do 7 million at some point. They might have both gotten there somewhat organically and on accident.
That's so interesting. I mean,
But yeah,
like you said, typically a doctor went to school to be a doctor. He knew he was going to be a doctor, or she went to school, got a degree, started doing it. I mean, most professions you plan ahead, whereas agencies, like you said, it typically sort of happens around you. And then you're like, maybe I can make this work. Why not? That's fascinating.
yeah. And so they get there, and then there's a point in time where they realize either I'm not good at sales and I want to figure out sales because I need to, or we've hit a ceiling. We're good enough at sales to get to this 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 million because we're just world class at what we do, and word of mouth happens. But at some point, there's a level where an agency wants to become sustainable, predictable, and scalable. One of those three, ideally all three of those. And that's where we really come in and say, hey, if you want to be predictable, you need to predictably be able to drive X amount of leads. You need to predictably have a win rate of this percentage. You need to charge as much money, right? And that's how you become predictable. Sustainable, I don't want to be dependent on the CEO or founder. If that anything happens to them or they want to change their life or whatever, that business is dependent upon them, means you're unsustainable. Or you're dependent on a tactic, right? Where it's like, hey, I heard LinkedIn automation works. And so we're using automated messaging on LinkedIn and it works super well. They change their terms of service. They shut down the tool you're using. Well, that's not sustainable. And so you got to create process and operations. And then scalable is the last one. It's the buzzword. How do we scale our business? Well, it's hard to scale something that is not well-defined and well-oiled. And so when you want to, bring on a salesperson, you might get lucky and find a sales rock star that crushes it. But if that person leaves you, like I did, my owner a long time ago, and started my own thing, or they find a better job that's more stable or pays more money, if they leave you, then you go back to zero, right? Not sustainable, not scalable. Whereas I would like to create a factory of good sales reps that I make great through my processes, through my operations, through my systems and the technology I use, the assets I create for them. That's where we really help.
Interesting. So where's typically the lowest hanging fruit? Is it fixing prospecting, or is it fixing actually like making the sale?
It depends on the agency. So if an agency has inbound leads, I can add hundreds, if not millions of dollars in revenue in 90 days because I don't care about lead gen. You've already got some leads coming in. High likelihood of you having a win rate that's acceptable in my eyes is very low. And so I'm going to look at it's just like conversion rate optimization for a website. If you run 1,000 people to your website and you get a 1% conversion rate, well, then you're going to convert 10 customers, and that's worth $100, right? We'll just use an e-commerce example here. A lot of people think, well, I need to go get 2,000 customers or 2,000 traffic or people to my website to make $200, right? Because I'm going to convert at 1%. It's going to be 20 deals, $10 each, $200. Well, the smart marketer would say, why spend more money on more traffic when I can just use the traffic that's already here and go from 1% to 1.5 or 1% to 2% by improving my conversion rate? Or the other part is, or I can try to stay at 1% and start charging more for my product.
Right.
Low way to grow. And so there's three categories I look at. There's leads, there's win rate, and there's client value. The low hanging fruit's typically the win rate or client value, especially if you have inbound leads coming in. Now, if you don't have leads,
talk to me about the flip. Yeah. So what if it's like, hey, I got no traffic?
Win rate doesn't matter that much. I mean, it does because every lead is that much more heavy to you because it matters that much more. But realistically, if you don't have a steady flow of leads, it's hard to charge premium, right? Because you're desperate for a deal, you got to pay your bills. You don't have the luxury of, instead of charging 50 grand, charging 500 grand because you have a massively full pipeline where you have the ability to lose 10 deals in exchange for landing that one whale, right? And so if you just don't have leads, that's what you got to figure it out. So it's case by case. We start every engagement with a roadmap. So if you're like, hey, I want to be involved, and figure out my sales operation, even if you want to throw me a bunch of money, I can't let you, because I need to know the plan. I need to know where you're at, where we're taking you, and how we're going to get you there. And oftentimes, if you don't have leads, it's starting there. If you do have leads, we'll start with the low hanging fruit of figuring out how to up the win rate or up the client value.
So if I come to you and I'm like, I don't have leads, do you start like a well-rounded package of like, okay, we're going to start with some ads, we're going to start initiating an SEO strategy, or is it just like you need to run ads because you need leads now?
Yeah, I mean, we're very sales minded, so I'm going to say we're going to do outbound sales. So it's prospecting, it's lead generation through cold email, social selling, cold, the phone, retargeting ads on folks who you send content to in your outreach, direct mail, even including direct mail in your outreach. And so it's building a holistic omni-channel approach for how do we get in front of our ideal customer. So sometimes it's starting there. And the reason we'll start there is if we know that you have a defined ideal client. If you have that defined, great. The second thing is, do you have a defined messaging and positioning, right? Or do you sound like everybody else, which is going to make your sales much more difficult? Those two things, if those aren't in place, then we start there. Who's your ideal client? How do we make sure we tighten up your messaging and your positioning? And then let's layer in the outreach, because the outreach is going to be made more effective if we figure those two things out first.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you start cold emailing people and say like, hey, we're a sales training program, versus your tagline, which is like, we help businesses fire themselves from sales. One jumps out at you like, what? And then the other one is, you've heard it a million times. So that makes total sense. You got to refine that stuff. And like you said, it'll go from 1% to 5 or whatever if you've done
that. And an easy exercise, we call it the no competition positioning statement. It's essentially a formula in the version of a sentence, which is, we help audience, fill in the blank, solve, accomplish, achieve, goal, right? Fill in the blank goal. So we help audience achieve, experience, goal without pain point, insert pain point, through our unique way of doing things, right? That is a good exercise to start working through your positioning. So I'll give you an example for an agency. Let's say we help elite personal, just because it's a very saturated space and I have customers in this space. So we help elite personal injury attorneys achieve #1 ranking on Google without having to wait 6 to 9 months for SEO to kick in through our unique 6-step blah, blah, blah SEO framework, right?
Right.
That is a unique positioning that says, I know exactly who I serve, where I'm taking them, the things that we're going to avoid by getting them there, and how we do it.
That's a great exercise. I like that. So now talk to me. I'm curious about when you build a system for a company, an agency, what does the compensation look like that you recommend for salespeople? Because this, I think, is a point of contention, right? For us, it was always like, should they be full commission, really close to full commission?
Yeah.
Is that bad? Does that negatively, should they just be salary?
I'm glad you asked. It's one of my favorite questions, because the answer is there's 25 different comp plans I might suggest. I'm going to help you whittle it down. So I actually have a comp bot. We'll figure out how to get that into people's hands. But basically, you answer about a string of 12 questions. It spits out the compensation plan that I would suggest.
Okay.
We'll figure out how to get that in people's hands. But the way that I think through compensation, because compensation is a massive issue, like you said, and people don't realize how massive an issue it is, where it can cost you tens if not hundreds of thousands of dollars and you not even know it, right? It could be a leaky faucet in the foundation of your home that you don't even know is leaking, and you're just shoveling money out the door. And so a couple of things that I think through. So there's all sorts of models. There's base plus commission, there's base plus bonus, there's commission only. There's, do I pay my commission up front? Do I pay my commission in perpetuity over the extension of, or amortize it over the life of the client? There's all these different models.
Does the client have to stick for X amount of time before the
100%.
commission kicks
those
in?
Things, which never do that, by the way. It's not the salesperson's fault the client left. It's delivery team's fault. More than likely, 95% of the times. So the things that I'm thinking through, one, you will never earn the right to do commission only if you don't have lead flow coming into those salespeople. So if you don't have a predictable, consistent flow of leads coming to the salespeople, it just doesn't make sense for you to commission only. You're gonna run, one, you're gonna get terrible quality salespeople. Two, you're gonna churn your salespeople left and right. There's nothing, even though it seems free to get commission only, it's actually far more of a hit to your profitability over the long term, whether it be software costs, time invested in training them, meetings you have to meet with, opportunity cost of all these leads or opportunities getting dropped in the meantime of someone leaving and you having this gap between when they leave and when you hire someone else. So only time I suggest commission only, just a flat commission only plan, is if you have a solid amount of leads. If you don't have a solid amount of leads, then I highly suggest some form of base or what I call a draw. Draw is common in other spaces, but a draw is essentially where you lend them a salary for a season until they are on ramped to a certain level of stability where a commission plan or a lower base plus commission can sustain them in a healthy way.
Got it.
And so a couple of things I look through is how leads. So do you have leads? Do you not? If you do, great. You can entertain a draw to commission or a commission model. If you don't, then you got to involve some sort of compensation because there's going to be groundwork in them creating the lead.
Sure.
So another thing I look for is the commission model. Will they be doing inbound sales, meaning leads are coming to them? Even if it's not enough leads, are there inbound sales or is it all outbound? If you have both, where some leads might come in and they have to go get other ones, then I would have a variable commission there, meaning a higher commission for outbound because it's harder than for inbound. You want to incentivize them to still do outbound. A couple of things that I consider is paying the commission up front, meaning paying a higher percentage of month one of a retainer versus amortizing and paying a percentage of every time the client pays. This is a big mistake I see agencies make. They blow money left and right. They think, well, every time the client pays, I should pay my salesperson 5, 6, 7, 8%. But if you have a good retention, and I'll end on this point, if you have good retention, meaning 6 months or more, you can retain a client on average, you have the data to prove it for longer than 6 months, it's actually more profitable for you to pay 30 to 50% of just the first month of the retainer and be done, right? So say it's a $10,000 retainer, you can either pay 6% in perpetuity, which is going to be, what is that? It's 120 grand a year, $600 a month. So about $7,200 in commission for that one deal over the course of a year. Or I can pay even 50% of one, and that's $5,000. So it makes month one not profitable, but it makes every other month after that much more profitable. And after about month 5 or 6, that profit turns over. And now every month you keep them after the 5th or 6th month is essentially increasing your bottom line.
Now, is this all, I'm assuming, do you guys give them the framework for this? Here's like the contract template, like the agreement template. So, cause like, this is all a lot. Let's say I'm sitting down with you, I'm following you. I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm type B. That makes most sense for me. Great. But like to put the program together, that's a huge project. Yeah. Like just to like, you know what I mean? Draw it up and like put it in place. And
I've done hundreds of comp plans now in terms of just consulting on them. We get it done in an hour just by knowing all the numbers. We have an intake form. And so we do that with them. It's a massive driver of profit over time. And you'll never really know. It's one of those things that we made the right decision. You wouldn't know if we made the wrong one or the right one. We know we made the right one, and we know we saved you tens of $100,000 by doing it. But really where we come in is the whole sales operation, is thinking through that is a facet of a much larger problem. There's a book called Who Not How that's becoming more popular. It's all about who solves problems. The how creates problems, meaning a lot of us want to figure out sales. And so we think, how do I figure out sales? Even though my background is not in sales, even though I'm not a salesperson, even though I've never hired, trained, and managed salespeople, I'm going to go try to figure out the how. And the how is a long process of you trying to learn how to do it, which creates a lot of problems for you. Or you can go find your who, which is what I believe I am for hundreds of agencies, is the who. Go find your who that, yes, they're going to be costly at the beginning, but the return on your investment is both time. It's going to get done well and it's going to get done fast. And your return is going to be much faster and much better. Right. And so, yes, they might drop a pretty penny on me and my company. And this isn't necessarily a pitch for me, but this is how you should be positioning your agency too, is you should try to become the who and try to push your ideal client trying to be the how.
Why would you want to waste time figuring out SEO when you can just hire somebody?
Time's valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
Opportunity cost is valuable. Lost deals is valuable. The owner being the bottleneck in the sales department is a problem. And therefore, if you can get rid of that problem, it's valuable. And so
I have this argument with my dad all the time. Every time, the toilet breaks or something. No, Dad, I'm not going to figure out how to fix it. I'm just going to pay somebody who knows how to fix it.
That's why I haven't figured out how to fix cars. I love driving my big F-150. Big F-150. People who are like truck fans, like, that's funny. It's not big. But for people who don't, so anyways, I'm not a car guy. Like, I enjoy driving them. I enjoy spending a lot of money on them, but I don't personally want to figure them out. I'd rather go give it to someone who can, because my time is more valuable than me figuring it out. And so you should look at your time the same way in your agency.
All right. Last question for you before I let you go.
Yeah.
What about finding the salespeople? So you have the structure, the system in place, but I always felt like it was really hard to find good salespeople. Is that something that you guys help with? Do you have a blueprint for that? Yeah,
we have a blueprint. So we have a 6-stage hiring funnel, if you want to call it that, since I know the audience here loves the term funnel. So our goal is how do we cast the widest net? Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of some copywriting, right? From a job description perspective, you want to attract the right people, but you also want to attract a volume of people. And so there's using tools and using the platforms that are the right job boards, right? I'll be straight up. Indeed and LinkedIn are your two best for salespeople, period. Okay. Don't mess around with how they look. I mean, you can use a tool like a Jazz HR, which is what we use. There's other ones out there called like Breezy HR and BAM, like there's other ones, but Jazz is by far the best syndicator. So a syndicator, basically you do the job description once, you do all the parameters for what you're looking for, and then you can choose which job boards that'll syndicate it to.
Right.
So there's that. So I syndicated the boards. Don't be afraid to throw a little bit of money behind it. So $400, $500 typically on average, up to $1,000 to get the right amount of people. So it's just like it is PPC, right? You're paying per click essentially. Mm-hmm. And so you want to pay Indeed or you want to pay LinkedIn to get the right candidates and the right amount of candidates into your pipeline. Because what you want to do is you want to fill the entire funnel with between 150 and 500 candidates. The next step in our process, once you've casted the net and you've brought them in, is you want to do something that is going to eliminate a large portion of that quantity, right? So you're essentially throwing your nets out there, getting a bunch. You want to be able to sort through those without spending a bunch of time. Mm-hmm. So we do what we call a video submission test. So we are essentially testing these, let's just say it's 500 for round number's sake. We are testing these 500 people by requesting on autopilot, right? We use Jazz HR, we can build in some automations to essentially get them to submit a 5-minute video, which is intro about them, what had them interested in the job, how they can provide value. We're just looking for how they present themselves, how they carry themselves, how they speak, what actually has them interested. Are they actually a good fit for a sales role? What you'll find is if you do that, you'll have about 15% left over just off that first automated step.
Right.
Then you go through those. That's step 2. So get the video submission. You'll review those submissions, or someone on your team will. You'll usually weed out about 50 to 70% of them. Let's just say 50. And then you go to step 3, which is the first Zoom interview. So we do an interview. We have all the scripts for every question you should ask, how you should evaluate their answers, a scorecard to how you should rate them and what the score should be at the end. We have all that built out for our clients. And then you do the interview. If it goes well, you pass them on. You'll usually find about 50% of those will make it through to the next step. The next step is super important.
So now if I'm carrying my math, you're down to about 4 good candidates at this point.
Yeah. So 500, 15%. So you're looking at, what is that? That's 45, that's 60. It's like 75 60, candidates maybe. Uh-huh. And then you'll cut that in half. So you'll be down to just call it 35.
And then we have it again. So that was low.
And then
so around like 15.
That. So now you're looking at probably your top 12 to 15 candidates, give or take.
I like that. That's manageable. Yeah, that sounds good.
And so then you do what we do the homework and assessment stage. So we do an assessment, we utilize the DISC assessment, just to make sure there's nothing agreed and just crazy, right? What we usually find is someone who's higher D on the DISC assessment, and lower I.
He sounds bad. I have no idea what DISC assessment is.
Yeah, don't worry about it. But for
D's are good in
salespeople,
this. Okay.
D, yeah, D's good. So DISC, it just means they're more of like a driver. They're more of goal oriented. They're kind of a go getter. And if you read through a DISC, you'll understand a decent sales profile.
Okay.
Anyway, so you do the assessment. You have them submit their assessment. I don't put a ton of stock in that, but enough to just any red flags. And then we do a homework. So our homework consists of understanding our service, understanding our ideal customer, proving that you do. So I want you to, here's our services page. Here's what we do. Here's who we do it for. I want you to go find an ideal customer. I want you to go find the decision makers that you think are in that company. I want you to explain why you picked both of those. And then I want you to craft your first, or one, what is the campaign you'd put together? And then lastly, what would the first message of that campaign look like? Just to I just want to see how they think. They're never going to be perfect ever. But I want to see how they think. If it's a lost cause, you'll know.
Sure.
And then you'll probably be down to your last 3 at this point. And you do what we call an executive interview, which is where the CEO comes in. It's basically culture fit, compensation plan, talking through that kind of stuff. And then you want to offer 2 or 3 of those at the end.
I got to say, man, I wish I would have met you a few years ago when I was running our agency, because every time we hired a salesperson, it was reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
You find somebody you think is going to be a great fit, and you waste so much time and money learning things that you could have filtered out if you had a process.
And one of the biggest mistakes most agencies make is thinking that to solve their problem instantly, that they need to go find a salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, even a good salesperson, if they come into nothing or they come into very little, they're not set up for success. They're likely not going to be, even if they're good, right? Because even if they're a good salesperson, has a great sales background, oftentimes they're probably coming from an environment where they had the right tech stack that was oiled. They have the right data tools. They have the right systems and process and playbooks to work through. Agencies typically don't have those things. Why we exist is we create those foundational things, and then we bring the salesperson into the foundation. And so if you're thinking about, like, if I throw money at a salesperson, it's not like I throw money at you, you bring me back a bunch of deals, and this is a perfect engagement. You've got to do the hard work of having the foundation set up, even a skeleton of a foundation set up. But if you think that a salesperson is going to come in and without any guidance, without any training, without any foundation set up, that they're going to be successful, you're going to be probably pretty sour about the outcome.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure. I mean, I can think of 2 or 3 salespeople that we hired, it didn't work out. And then we reflected on it and we were like, well, it didn't work out because we didn't set it up right. We didn't set them up for success. It's, they could be a great salesperson, who knows, but it just wasn't working out here, and we couldn't bear the cost of it anymore. So we had to let them go, All right. So people are listening and they like what they're hearing. Where do they go to find you?
Yeah. So the best place, honestly, is salesdrivenagency.com. If you're interested in us building on sales operations, Sales Driven Agency, book a call. Our website points to book a call pretty much everywhere. So you'll be able to find where you want. We also have the Best Damn Agency Mastermind, which is for 7- and 8-figure digital agency owners only. That can be found at bestdamnmastermind.com.
So that's like, all right, you know what you're doing on the agency side here. We're really going to blow things up for you on the sales side if you qualify.
Yeah. So it's both. So it's my sales consulting. We work with smaller agencies, not too small because we're not very cheap. Smaller agencies up to tens of millions of dollars of agencies, and we'll come in and we have different plans for both of them. But we move the needle. And the mastermind is really a combination of wanting to be in a community run by me, of other agencies who are taking growth very seriously. And some of them have sales figured out and they want to continue to oil it and make it better. A lot of them are past clients of mine. But then there's some people who still haven't figured out sales, but they've gotten to a certain level because they're really good at what they do. They figured out growth in one way, shape, or form, and they just want to be around people who have figured it out, and obviously be around me, my team. That's the most valuable thing. It's a pretty good bang for your buck, and it's just a hell of a lot of fun. I mean, we do our anti-retreats. We call them anti-retreats, which is our version of a retreat where we go. We'll rent a mansion. Our next one's in Scottsdale in September. So we'll rent out a mansion. We'll do ATVs and dune buggies through the desert. We'll go golf. We'll have casino nights by the pool, but then we'll also workshop each other's agency and things of that nature. So it's a lot of fun. It's also iron sharpens iron, a lot of accountability, a lot of adding tools, tools to the tool belt, solving problems at an accelerator rate because other people in the group are solving them. So that offer is more about the community and the sharpening that comes through community. The sales consulting is a very dialed in focused 3 to 6 month sprint where we come in and solve a very specific big problem.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense. Cool. So salesdrivenagency.com is the URL. Joey, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me.
Thanks everybody for watching. We will see you in the next.